I'm recording this in my car because I need someone to hear what happened, even if it's just my phone, even if no one ever listens. The Sandpiper Motel sat 20 miles outside Bakersfield, on a highway most people forgot existed. I took it because I was tired, because my eyes were closing on their own, and the next town was another hour away. The neon sign flickered SNDPR in pink and blue, casting strange shadows across the empty parking lot. Half the letters were dead. Had been for years, probably. The building itself looked like it had been constructed in the 70s and abandoned in the 90s. Turquoise paint peeling in long strips, rust stains bleeding down from the gutters. But the vacancy sign was lit, and that was enough. The clerk didn't look at me when I checked in, just slid the key across the counter. Room 7. His fingers were stained yellow, and he smelled like cigarette smoke that had seeped into skin over decades. Not the fresh smell of a recent cigarette, the deep, permanent smell of someone who'd been smoking in the same small space for 30 years. I asked if there was Wi-Fi. He pointed to a handwritten sign that said no Wi-Fi, no refunds, no exceptions. His finger left a smudge on the counter. I noticed his nails were too long. I asked if there was a restaurant nearby. He stared at me for 3 full seconds before answering. Said there was a gas station 2 miles back. Said it closed at 9. It was already 8:45. I thanked him and took the key. Dunt was attached to a large plastic diamond keychain, the kind designed to be too bulky to accidentally pocket. The room was what you'd expect, floral bedspread that had probably been washed 1,000 times without ever looking clean. Thin walls. A painting of a lighthouse bolted to the wall above the bed. The air conditioner rattled like it was dying, but it pushed out cold air, so I left it running. The bathroom had pink tile and a shower curtain with a map of California printed on it. Fresno was torn. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and fell onto the bed without pulling back the covers. The mattress sagged in the middle. Springs creaked, but I was too tired to care. I set an alarm for 6 a.m. and closed my eyes. Sleep came fast. I woke to knocking. 3 sharp raps. Then, silence. I checked my phone. 2:47 a.m. I lay there in the dark, disoriented, trying to remember where I was. The knocking came again. Same rhythm, same intensity. 3 deliberate hits against my door. I called out asking who it was. No answer. Just the sound of footsteps moving away down the concrete walkway outside. Slow footsteps. Unhurried. I got up and looked through the peephole. The walkway was empty. The parking lot lights hummed and flickered, cycling through different levels of brightness. My car sat alone under one of them. No other vehicles, no people. Just the wind pushing a plastic bag across the asphalt. I watched for a full minute before going back to bed. But sleep felt thinner now, like I was floating just beneath the surface of it. The knocking returned at 3:15, then 3:43, then 4:11. Each time 3 knocks. Each time silence when I answered. Each time footsteps fading away. I started timing the intervals. 28 minutes, then 28 minutes again. Exactly. I stopped getting up. I lay there in the dark, listening to the pattern, trying to convince myself it was another guest, someone drunk or confused. But the parking lot had been empty, and the intervals were too precise. At 4:39, I was waiting for the next round. It didn't come. Instead, I heard something else. A key sliding into a lock. Not my lock, the room next to mine. Room 6 or room 8. The sound of a door opening, closing, then footsteps inside the adjacent room, pacing back and forth. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened. The footsteps stopped directly on the other side. Then 3 knocks, right where my ear was pressed. I jerked back. At 5:30 a.m., I gave up on sleep. The sky was still dark, but I couldn't stay in that room anymore. I packed my bag quickly and walked to the office. The same clerk sat behind the desk, looking exactly as he had 7 hours earlier. Same position, same yellow fingers resting on the counter, same long nails. He didn't look up when I entered. The fluorescent light above him buzzed and flickered in rhythm with the parking lot lights. I asked about the knocking. He stared at me for a long moment. His eyes were so dark they looked black in the harsh light. Then he said, checkout time was 11. His voice was flat, mechanical, like he'd said the same sentence 10,000 times. I told him I was leaving now, that I'd barely slept, that someone had been harassing me all night. He slid a piece of paper toward me without breaking eye contact. A bill. I looked at the charges. 1 night stay, $62, plus a fee labeled early departure penalty, $185. I argued, told him that was insane, that it wasn't posted anywhere. He didn't move, didn't blink, just kept staring with eyes that seemed too dark for the fluorescent light above us. He said I'd agreed to the terms when I checked in, said it was printed on the back of the registration card. I pulled out my copy and flipped it over. The text was there, tiny, nearly microscopic, but there. Early departure before 11 a.m., subject to penalty fee equivalent to 3 times room rate. I paid. I had to. Something about the way he looked at me made it clear I didn't have a choice. My hands shook as I counted out the cash. As I turned to leave, he spoke again. His voice was quieter this time, almost kind. He said room 7 doesn't like to be left early. He said the last person who tried is still checked in. I asked what he meant. He smiled. His teeth were yellow. He pointed to the wall behind him. A pegboard with room keys. Every hook was full, except for one. Room 7. I drove for 6 hours straight before I stopped. Didn't eat, didn't check my phone. Just drove with the windows down and the radio loud, trying to drown out the memory of those knocking intervals. When I finally pulled into a rest stop, I checked my wallet. The receipt from the sandpiper was there, but the date was wrong. It said I'd checked in 3 weeks ago, and the room number had changed. It said room 8. At the bottom, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "See you soon. Room 9 is ready." This happened 6 months ago, but I still can't walk past a hotel ice machine without my chest tightening. I'm telling you this because I need to say it out loud, because keeping it inside feels like swallowing glass. The Crestview Motor Lodge was my stopover between Phoenix and Albuquerque. A work trip, standard corporate training, nothing special. I'd made the reservation online. The photos looked decent. Clean rooms, good reviews. The kind of place that exists in every small town across America, identical and forgettable. When I arrived, the sun was setting. The motel was exactly as advertised. 2 stories, exterior corridors, a small pool that probably hadn't been used since summer ended. The woman at check-in was polite and efficient. She asked about my stay. I told her just 1 night. She upgraded me to the 2nd floor. Said the view was better. I didn't have the heart to tell her. I didn't care about views. My room was 24, corner unit. I carried my suitcase up the metal stairs. The motel was quiet. Only 3 cars in the parking lot. Off-season for whatever tourism this town pretended to have. I noticed the ice machine when I reached the top of the stairs. It sat at the end of the corridor, humming steadily. A white noise that blended into the background. The sound was oddly comforting. Room 24 was clean, generic, the kind of room that could be anywhere. Beige walls, brown carpet, a landscape painting of mountains I didn't recognize. I unpacked my toiletries, plugged in my laptop, and ordered takeout from a Chinese place down the street. I ate while responding to work emails. By 11, I was ready for bed. Around midnight, I woke up thirsty. The air in the room was dry and stale, typical of motel climate control. My throat felt like sandpaper. I grabbed the plastic ice bucket from the bathroom counter and stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow-green. The ice machine sat at the end of the corridor, exactly where I remembered it. Still humming, still waiting. I filled the bucket. The sound of ice tumbling into plastic seemed too loud in the silence. The machine was older than I'd initially thought, rust spots around the dispenser. A dent in the side panel, a handwritten note taped to the top that said, "Push, hard." I did. Ice cascaded out. Too much. I pulled the bucket away and some cubes scattered across the floor. That's when I noticed the woman. She was standing at the other end of the hallway, near the stairs. Just standing there, facing my direction but not quite looking at me. Not looking at anything, really. She wore a floral dress that seemed too formal for a place like this. Too formal for midnight. Her hair hung straight and dark past her shoulders. In the fluorescent light, it looked wet. I nodded at her. The kind of awkward acknowledgement you give strangers in shared spaces. She didn't respond, didn't move. I bent down to pick up the fallen ice cubes, and when I stood back up, she was still there. Same position, same blank expression. I called out and asked if she needed help. My voice sounded too loud in the corridor. She didn't answer, didn't blink. I walked back to my room, ice bucket in hand, and locked the door behind me. I fastened the chain for good measure. Something about her stillness bothered me. The way she stood so perfectly motionless, like a statue, like someone had paused her mid-movement and forgotten to press play. I poured water over the ice and drank. The cold helped, but sleep felt further away now. I woke again at 2 a.m., thirsty again. My body felt dehydrated in a way that didn't make sense, like I'd been sweating in my sleep. But the room was cold, too cold. The air conditioner rattled at full blast even though I'd turned it down before bed. I thought about skipping the ice, about just drinking from the tap. But the taste of motel water always makes me queasy. Metallic, chemical. I grabbed the bucket and opened the door. The woman was still there. Same spot, same dress, same unnatural stillness. This time I could see her face more clearly under the lights. Her expression was blank, empty, like a photograph of a person rather than an actual person. Her eyes were open, but they didn't reflect the light. They looked flat, dead. I called out again and asked if she was okay, asked if I should call someone. She didn't answer, didn't even blink. I filled the ice bucket quickly, my hands shaking enough that I scattered cubes again. This time I didn't pick them up. When I turned back, she had moved. Now she was halfway down the hallway, closer to my room, still facing me, still perfectly still. I could see details now that I couldn't before. Her dress had a pattern, small roses, faded, old-fashioned, and her feet were bare, dirty, like she'd been walking on asphalt. I hurried back and locked the door, heart hammering. I pushed a chair against the door handle. Irrational, maybe, but it made me feel safer. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the door, waiting for something. I don't know what. A knock, a voice, some confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. At 3:30 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow and deliberate. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath, watching the shadow of feet blocking the light beneath the door frame. 2 feet, standing there, not moving. Then came the sound of ice. Not cubes falling into a bucket, but the sound of ice being crushed, slowly, rhythmically, like someone was pressing it between their hands, grinding it. The sound was wet. Horrible. The footsteps resumed, moving away toward the ice machine. I waited until I heard them descend the stairs before I exhaled. My lungs burned. I realized I'd been holding my breath for over a minute. I didn't sleep after that. Just sat on the edge of the bed, watching the door, watching the window, waiting for sunrise. At 6 a.m., I checked out. Didn't shower. Didn't eat the complimentary breakfast. Just grabbed my bag and left. The clerk was different from the one who'd checked me in. A younger woman with tired eyes and a name tag that said Brenda. I mentioned the woman in the hallway. Described her. The floral dress. The wet hair. The way she stood so still. Brenda looked at me strangely. Said I was the only guest on the second floor. The motel was nearly empty. Off-season. She pulled up her computer and showed me the registration. 3 rooms occupied, all on the first floor. Second floor had been empty since I checked in. I insisted I'd seen someone. Multiple times. She suggested maybe I saw a reflection or a shadow. People see things when they're tired. I asked about the ice machine. She said it had been broken for 2 weeks. Maintenance kept meaning to fix it, but no one complained because so few rooms were occupied. I told her I'd used it 3 times during the night. That I had ice in my room right now. She looked at me like I was confused, maybe drunk. She offered to walk me up, to show me. We stood in front of the machine together. The out of order sign was taped across the dispenser. The cord was unplugged, wrapped around the back of the unit. Brenda opened the front panel to show me. It was empty, but when she pulled the door open, ice poured out onto the floor. Fresh, cold, hundreds of cubes cascading across the corridor. More ice than the machine should be able to hold. We both stared at it. She backed away, said she needed to call maintenance, said this didn't make sense. I left before she could ask any more questions. But as I walked down the stairs, I looked back one more time. The woman in the floral dress was standing at the end of the second floor corridor, watching me leave. And in her hands, she was holding something. An ice bucket, full to the brim. I need to tell someone about this before I convince myself it didn't happen. Before the memory smooths itself out into something rational. The Sunset Inn was the only motel in town, perched on the edge of a dying mining community in eastern Nevada. I was there for a documentary project. Local history. Ghost towns. Abandoned infrastructure. That kind of thing. The irony isn't lost on me now. The town itself was barely alive. Population 300 and dropping. Main Street had more boarded windows than open businesses. The few people I saw moved slowly, like they were conserving energy for something more important. The motel sat on the outskirts. A single-story L-shaped building painted a faded yellow. Check-in was normal. The woman at the desk was friendly, chatty even. Her name tag said RUTH. She asked about my project and seemed genuinely interested. She recommended a diner down the street called Betty's. Said their pie was worth the trip. She gave me room 12, ground floor, and mentioned that room service ended at 9 p.m. I thanked her and didn't think much of it. Most motels this size don't even offer room service. The room was better than I expected. Clean, dated but maintained. The bed was firm. The TV worked. There was even a small desk with decent lighting. I unpacked my equipment and spent the afternoon reviewing footage I'd shot earlier. Rusted mining equipment, collapsed buildings, the hollow shells of a town that used to matter. By the time I finished editing, it was almost 8. The sky outside had gone from orange to purple to black. I was hungry and tired. That's when I noticed the menu on the desk. Laminated, professionally printed. It listed simple offerings: burgers, sandwiches, soup, salads, reasonable prices. A phone number at the bottom. I called the front desk. Ruth answered on the second ring. I ordered a cheeseburger and fries. She said it would be about 30 minutes. Said the kitchen was small, but the cook was good. I went back to my laptop and waited. The food arrived 28 minutes later. A soft knock. Polite. No one was there, just a cart in the hallway, the kind with metal warming lids and a white tablecloth draped over the lower shelf. The burger was wrapped in wax paper, the fries in a red plastic basket, a small side salad, a can of Coke. It looked good, better than I expected from a place like this. I wheeled the cart inside and ate while editing footage. The burger was actually excellent, cooked perfectly. The fries were hot and crispy. I finished everything, surprised by the quality. But halfway through, I'd noticed something odd about the wax paper. There was writing on it. Faint. In pencil. Shaky letters like someone had written it quickly. I smoothed it out under the desk lamp and read the words, "Don't eat after 9. I checked the time. 8:47 p.m. I looked at the half-eaten burger in my hands, then back at the message. A prank, maybe. Some bored kitchen worker, or a weird inside joke I wasn't part of. I laughed it off and finished my meal. Pushed the cart back into the hallway. By 9:30, I was in bed with the lights off. I woke up at 3 a.m. with my stomach cramping. Not painful exactly, just wrong. Like something inside me was rearranging itself, moving. I stumbled to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. In the mirror, my reflection looked pale. My eyes seemed darker than they should be, sunken, and my skin had a gray tint that wasn't there before. That's when I heard the knock. Room service cartwheels squeaking in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate, coming from the left, getting closer. I looked through the peephole. The cart was there again. Same white tablecloth, same metal warming lid, same red plastic basket visible on the lower shelf. But I hadn't ordered anything. The knocking came again. 3 sharp raps on my door. I called out that there must be a mistake, that I hadn't ordered food. The knocking stopped, but the cart remained. I watched through the peephole as the warming lid lifted itself, slowly, like invisible hands were raising it. Inside was a plate, and on the plate was a burger. But the meat was moving, writhing, pulsing, like it was breathing, like it had a heartbeat. I could see it through the peephole, the texture shifting, changing, and there was a smell, even through the door, rotten, organic, the smell of something that died weeks ago. I stepped away from the door. The cramping in my stomach intensified. I felt something shift inside me. Something that didn't belong, something that was alive and aware. I ran to the bathroom and forced myself to vomit, stuck my fingers down my throat, gagged, heaved. What came up wasn't food. It was dark, viscous, thick like oil, It moved in the toilet water, writhing, separating into smaller pieces that swam independently, like they were trying to find a way back into me. I flushed 3 times before it all went down. Each time, some of it clung to the sides of the bowl, refused to leave. By morning, the cart was gone. My stomach felt normal, hollow. I was weak, shaking, but the cramping had stopped. I checked out early, too shaken to stay for breakfast. Ruth was at the desk again. Same friendly smile. I asked her about the room service, about the food I'd ordered last night. She tilted her head, confused. Said they didn't offer room service anymore. Not for 5 years. Not since the kitchen fire. Not since the cook died. I insisted I'd eaten a burger. That I'd called and ordered it. She pulled up the phone logs. No calls from room 12. Not at 8 p.m. Not at any time. I showed her the menu from my room. She took it from my hands and studied it carefully. Her smile faded. Then she pointed to the date printed in tiny letters at the bottom corner. It was from 2019, 5 years ago. Before the fire, she asked me what I'd eaten, what it tasted like. I couldn't bring myself to answer. She said the cook's name was Martin, said he'd died in the fire trying to finish an order, said they found him in the kitchen at 9:15 p.m., said his body was burned so badly they had to identify him by his dental records. She asked me again what I'd eaten, asked if I'd felt sick after. I told her about the cramping, about what I'd vomited. Said I should see a doctor. Said Martin used to put something special in his burgers, a family recipe, something no one else knew. I left without another word. But before I got in my car, I looked back at room 12. The door was open, and inside, sitting on the desk, was another menu, laminated, current date, with a new note written in pencil. Thank you for dining with us. Have you ever felt like something you consumed wasn't meant for you? I'm sharing this because silence feels like complicity. Like if I don't say it out loud, I'm agreeing to pretend it never happened. The Whispering Pines Motel was a temporary solution. My apartment flooded. A burst pipe in the unit above mine. Water damage throughout. Insurance was slow. Paperwork. Inspections. The usual bureaucratic nightmare. I needed somewhere cheap for 2 weeks while repairs were done. The motel was affordable and close to work. The kind of place where people live for months at a time, not just passing through. The building was older. 1960s construction. Single story, shaped like an L. The rooms faced inward toward a courtyard, with an empty pool filled with brown leaves and green algae. A chain-link fence surrounded the property. Half the parking spaces had faded yellow lines. The office had bars on the windows. My room was 9 amperes. The manager was a heavy-set man named Carl who barely looked up from his newspaper when I paid for 2 weeks in advance. Cash only. No questions asked. That kind of place. He handed me a key on a wooden paddle and told me checkout was noon. I asked about Wi-Fi. He pointed to a router on the shelf behind him and said the password was written on the side. Pines 1963. Room 9 amperes was what I expected. Small, functional. The bed was a double with a headboard bolted to the wall. The nightstand had cigarette burns. The bathroom was narrow, but the shower had decent water pressure. I could work with this. 2 weeks, that's all. The person in 9B kept strange hours. Thin walls meant I could hear everything. The TV was always on. Always the same channel. News, I thought. Or weather. That constant murmur of voices. And footsteps. Pacing. Back and forth. Sometimes at 2 a.m. Sometimes at 4 a.m. Sometimes just after dawn. At first, it didn't bother me. You accept these things in cheap motels. Everyone's got their own rhythm. On my third night, I heard knocking on my wall. 3 light taps from their side, right above my bed. I was half asleep when it happened. A few minutes later, 3 more taps. Then again. It felt deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. Like a code. I knocked back once, just to acknowledge it, just to say, I hear you. The tapping stopped. That night, I dreamed of drowning, of water filling my lungs while I tried to scream underwater. My mouth opened, but only bubbles came out. I woke up gasping. My sheets were soaked with sweat. The room felt humid, heavy. The next morning, I saw my neighbor for the first time. A woman, middle-aged, maybe 50, thin, almost skeletal. She was standing in her doorway, staring at the empty pool, just staring, not moving. Her hair was wet even though it hadn't rained, even though it was barely 7 a.m. She wore a bathrobe, light blue, stained. When she noticed me looking, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knows something you don't, something they enjoy knowing. I nodded and got in my car. When I looked back, she was still standing there, still smiling, still staring at the pool. The knocking became a nightly ritual. Always 3 taps, always around 2 a.m., always on the wall above my bed. I started knocking back. I don't know why. Maybe loneliness, maybe curiosity, maybe just to confirm someone was there, that I wasn't imagining it. It felt like a strange conversation, a language without words. But the dreams got worse. Each night, I was drowning in different ways. In a bathtub, in a swimming pool, in an ocean that went on forever, in a car filling with water, in a basement. Each time, I woke up soaked, gasping, terrified. 1 week in, I decided to introduce myself properly. I knocked on her door during the day, around 3 p.m. Sunlight still bright, no answer. I tried again in the evening. Still nothing. But I could hear movement inside. Footsteps. The TV. I could see the shadow of feet beneath the door. Someone was home. I called out and said I just wanted to say hello. That I was in 9 amperes. That I'd heard her knocking. The movement stopped. Complete silence. Then I heard her voice, muffled through the door, barely audible. You shouldn't be here. I asked what she meant. Told her I'd be here another week. That my apartment was being repaired. She didn't respond. I waited for a full minute. Nothing. Just silence. I went back to my room feeling unsettled. That night, the knocking was different. Frantic. Dozens of rapid knocks like someone was pounding on the wall with both fists. Desperate, I knocked back and yelled through the wall, asking if she was okay. The pounding stopped. Then I heard water. Running water. It sounded like it was coming from inside the walls. Rushing. Pouring. A flood. I called the front desk. Carl answered, annoyed. I explained about the knocking, about the water sounds. He sighed and said he'd come check it out. He arrived 10 minutes later, keys jangling. We stood outside 9B together. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. The room was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, no carpet, just bare concrete floor, bare walls, and water. Inches of water covering the floor, seeping under the door into the hallway. Dark water, murky. It smelled wrong, stagnant. like something had been sitting in it for months. Carl cursed and waded in, checked the bathroom, the pipes, tried to find the source. I stayed in the doorway and watched. The water rippled as he moved, but there were other ripples, ones that didn't match his footsteps, coming from the corner, from the closet, from nowhere. Carl said the room had been vacant for 3 months. Water damage from a broken pipe upstairs. They were waiting on contractors, waiting on insurance, waiting on permits. No one had been staying there. No one should have been inside at all. I showed him the wet footprints leading from her door to mine. Clear impressions, barefoot, adult-sized. He looked at them, looked at me, then said sometimes the pipes leak. Sometimes water finds its way under doors. I asked about the woman I'd seen, described her, the wet hair, the blue bathrobe, the way she stared at the pool. He went quiet. Then he asked what day I saw her. I told him. Last Thursday morning. He shook his head, said that was impossible. Said the last tenant in 9B was a woman named Sarah Whitmore. Said she drowned in the courtyard pool 3 months ago. Said they found her at dawn. Said she'd been floating there all night. That night, I moved to a different motel. Packed everything, checked out, paid Carl the difference for early departure. He didn't argue, just took the money and handed me a receipt. Before I left, I walked past 9B one last time. The door was closed, sealed with yellow caution tape, and from inside, I heard 3 soft knocks, then the sound of water, rising. This is going to sound paranoid, but I need to document this while the details are still fresh, while I can still remember which parts are real. The roadside rest motel appeared exactly when I needed it. I'd been driving for 16 hours straight, running on coffee and stubborn momentum, trying to make it from Denver to Salt Lake in one push. Stupid decision. By midnight, my eyes were closing on their own. The highway was empty, dark. Just me and the white lines, and the occasional truck passing in the opposite direction. The motel materialized out of the darkness, like it had been waiting for me. 1 story, 8 rooms, a vacancy sign glowing red in the night. No other buildings nearby, no gas station, no restaurant. Just the motel sitting alone in the desert like a painting. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there for a moment, engine running, debating whether to keep driving. But exhaustion won. The office was small, cramped. An old man sat behind the desk, moving slowly, methodically. He looked ancient. 90, maybe. His hands trembled as he pulled out a registration card. He asked for my information. I gave him my license. He studied it for a long time. His eyes moved across it like he was reading a novel. Then he looked up at me and asked if I wanted a room with a view. I almost laughed. A view of what? The empty highway? The desert darkness? But I said yes, because it seemed easier than asking questions. Easier than explaining I just needed a bed for 5 hours. He slid a key across the desk. Room 3. Said it was the best view in the house. His voice was soft, raspy, like dry paper. Room 3 had a window facing the parking lot. I could see my car directly below, the highway beyond, the darkness stretching out forever. Nothing else. I dropped my bag on the floor and collapsed onto the bed. I didn't even take off my shoes. Sleep came immediately, heavy and absolute. The kind of sleep that feels like falling. I woke to sunlight streaming through the window. Bright, harsh. I checked my phone. 9:37 a.m. I'd slept for 9 hours, way longer than I'd planned. I sat up, disoriented, and that's when I noticed something was different. Wrong. My camera was on the desk. I always keep it in my bag. Always. It's expensive. A Nikon D850. I never leave it out. Never. I walked over and picked it up. The power was on. The lens cap was off. Someone had used it. I checked the memory card. Someone had taken photos. Dozens of them. All from inside my room. All taken during the night. Shots of me sleeping. Different angles. Close-ups of my face. Wide shots from the corner. Shots of my belongings. My wallet. My keys. My bag. Shots of the door. The window. The walls. The ceiling. My hands shook as I scrolled through them. The timestamps were sequential. Starting at 2:17 a.m. and ending at 5:43 a.m. Over 3 hours of someone in my room, taking pictures while I slept. And in one photo, taken at 4:22 a.m., someone was standing in the corner, a figure in shadow, too dark to make out features, just a shape, tall, motionless, watching. I deleted everything and checked the room, looked in the closet, under the bed, in the bathroom. No one, nothing. The door was still locked from the inside, chain still fastened, window locked. No sign of forced entry. No sign anyone had been here at all. I went to the front desk to complain, to demand an explanation. A different person was there. A woman, young, maybe 25. She wore a polo shirt with a MOTEL logo. She smiled when I entered, asked how I'd slept. I told her someone had been in my room, that someone had used my camera, that I had photos proving it. She looked confused, concerned, said she'd just started her shift, that she'd been there since 6 a.m. I asked about the old man, the one who checked me in. She looked more confused, said she was the only one working, had been since she opened at 6 a.m. There was no old man, no one else on staff today. I described him, the trembling hands, the raspy voice, the way he'd studied my license. She shook her head slowly, said no one matching that description worked there. Said the owner was a woman in her 40s who lived off-site. Said sometimes her son helped out, but he was in his 20s. I demanded to see security footage. She said there were no cameras, budget motel, no security system. I asked about other guests. How many people were staying here? She pulled up the register on her computer, turned the screen toward me. According to the system, I was the only person who'd checked in during the last 72 hours. The only guest in the entire motel. Rooms 1, 2, and 4 through 8 were all empty. I felt my chest tighten, told her that was impossible, that the old man had checked me in at midnight. She clicked through the computer records, said there were no check-ins after 7 p.m. yesterday. The last entry before mine was 3 days ago. A couple passing through. They'd left that morning. I showed her my key. Room 3. She looked at it and confirmed it was a valid key, but said according to the system, Room 3 had been vacant since Monday. Back in my room, I packed quickly, threw everything into my bag. I needed to leave. Needed to get back on the road, back to somewhere that made sense. But when I picked up my camera to pack it, I noticed something new. One more photo. I hadn't taken it. I deleted everything, but there it was. A new image on the memory card. It showed me standing at the front desk, talking to the woman from behind. But in the background, reflected in the glass door behind me, there was someone else. The old man from last night. Standing outside in the parking lot, watching, waiting. In the photo, he was holding something, a camera, pointed directly at me, pointed at the exact spot where I was standing. I checked the timestamp. The photo was taken 10 minutes from now. In the future, I looked at my watch. 9:52 a.m. The photo said 10:02 a.m. I looked back at the camera screen, looked at the image. The timestamps didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Photos can't be taken in the future. That's not how time works. That's not how anything works. I grabbed my bag and ran to my car. My hands fumbled with the keys, dropped them, picked them up. The engine started on the first try. I pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Didn't check out. Didn't return the key. The speedometer hit 80, 90. The desert blurred past. 3 miles down the highway, I checked my rear-view mirror. The roadside rest motel was gone. The stretch of road where it had been was empty. Just desert and scrub brush and telephone poles. No building, no sign, no parking lot. Like it had never existed. I pulled over onto the shoulder and sat there, engine idling, trying to process what that meant. I pulled out my phone and checked my photos. The ones from the camera had synced automatically to my cloud storage. They were still there, all of them, including the one showing me at the front desk, the one from the future. I zoomed in on the old man's reflection. His face was clearer now, and he was smiling. Directly at the camera, directly at me. I blocked my cloud storage, deleted the app, deleted everything. But every few days, I receive a new photo, always from an unknown number, always from inside my current location. My apartment, my office, my car, my parents' house, the grocery store, the gym, always with the same figure in the background, always watching, always holding a camera. And the timestamps are always 10 minutes ahead of the present. Last week, I received a photo of me sleeping in my own bed. The timestamp said 3:47 a.m. I checked my phone at 3:37 a.m. when I woke up to use the bathroom. At 3:47, I took a photo of my empty bedroom to prove no one was there. But when I looked at the photo I'd taken, there was someone in the corner, the same figure. The same shadow. And on my nightstand, there was a piece of paper that wasn't there when I took the picture. I zoomed in. It was a receipt from the roadside rest motel. Room 4. Check-in date. Next week. I don't know what happens when I reach that date. I don't know if I'll check in voluntarily or if I'll wake up there. But the photos keep coming, and the timestamps keep counting down. 3 days from now, then 2 days, then 1. The old man is always in the background, always watching, always waiting. And in the most recent photo, he's not holding a camera anymore. He's holding a key. Room 4, with my name written on the tag. Would you rather be watched by something you can't see, or hear something that shouldn't be there? This is Dread Dynasty, where nightmares come to life. Thank you for watching tonight's stories. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because the next nightmare is closer than you think. Check the channel for more interesting nightmare.